Hello again, everyone. It is Gordon Majak here, back with another episode of Timeless Pop, Rock, and Soul. And today, on Saturday afternoon, it is a big ol' heaping dose of soul. We are going straight back to 1971, the spring of 1971, when I was only 12 years old, just about to turn 13. And there was this groovy tune that came on the radio that I just never got out of my system. I never forgot about this song. And the crazy thing is, all these years later, I only today found out that I had the backstory and the bio, so to speak, of this artist and this song so completely embarrassingly wrong that it's just almost mind-boggling. And I will share my stupidity with you here in just a second, right before we jump into the music, because this is such a cool tune. Spring of 71. Now, okay, here we have a band. The band name is actually down here. The Beginning of the End, and a song called Funky Nassau. Now, the band, The Beginning of the End, is a five-piece, or was a five-piece band back in the day, and it was basically composed of three brothers, and then a couple other gentlemen, and then a horn section. The three brothers were the Munnings brothers, okay? So there's the Munnings brothers, front and center there. And as I said, they are the bulk, the heart and soul of the band, The Beginning of the End. This is their big hit single from 1971, Funky Nassau, okay? Now, these guys kind of come out of nowhere, more on that in a second. And they have a pretty big hit with this record, Funky Nassau, and then they disappear and they're never really heard from again. But here's the big thing. So this record gets all the way up to number 15 in the pop chart. Here they are again. I assume that's the three Munnings brothers. This record gets all the way up to number 15 on the pop chart, number 7 on the R&B chart, and number 31 over in the UK. As I said, a five-man band, the three brothers and a couple other gentlemen, and then the horn section. So a nice, big, funky sound for The Beginning of the End and their song, Funky Nassau. Now, here's where the story gets a little ridiculous, and I have to say a little humiliating for me, because I always just assumed that I had this story down. All the way back, ever since 1971. How many years is that? 52 freaking years, right? I always just assumed from the lyrics of the song, and I'll tell you more about that in a second, I always just assumed the title and the lyrics, Funky Nassau, were referring to some geographical portion of Nassau County in New York State, okay? That was the only Nassau I had ever heard of back there in the day. Now, of course, there are Nassaus all over the world, as we'll soon find out. But back there in the day, that was the only Nassau I knew, was the one that I think is on Long Island in New York, right? And we used to have a thing back in the day, I guess nowadays they call them hype records. I've always referred to them as rave-ups. And to me, a rave-up was defined as an artist and a song, where an artist does a song and the song is basically self-referential about the artist themselves and their music, and sort of like what they're doing and what they're here to do and what they're going to do and what they are doing in their music. And it's basically the artist singing about themselves and sort of their mission statement in music. And that used to be a big thing, especially back in the day. It has a long history. It goes all the way back on the R&B and the funk side, as we're going to hear here with The Beginning of the End band. On the R&B and funk side, it goes all the way back, of course, to James Brown, had self-referential lyrics and songs back in the day. Of course, Sly and the Family Stone, and so many other artists throughout the history of soul and R&B have done that sort of thing. And it used to be a pretty cool thing. I think of songs like Archie Bell and the Drells, Tighten Up, where they're talking about playing their instruments and jamming and having a great time, as is the case in this song. And so I always just assumed that this band was sort of like out of that tradition. Maybe like I visualize this band as sort of like a Sly and the Family Stone thing, where maybe multi-racial band, you know, comprised of different people from that area, different races, different musical backgrounds, different styles and genres and influences mixing together, right? I just always assumed it was about New York, the Nassau in New York. Well, it was only today, as I was looking up the backstory of the song, come to find out that this band, these three brothers, the Munnings brothers, and this band, The Beginning of the End, came all the way out of Nassau in the Bahamas. Okay, these guys aren't even American per se. I could not have been off of the map, out of my mind by a larger swath there, thinking it was New York, and it turns out it's all the way down there in the Bahamas. And these guys came out of the Bahamas there in the early 70s, financed their own record, flew up to Miami and recorded their record in a nice, high-quality professional studio, Criteria Studios there in Miami. In 71, the song goes on to become a huge hit, not only in the U.S., but as I said, in the UK, a huge hit on the R&B chart. And it turns out that the song had already been quite popular back in their own country of the Bahamas, even before they ever came to the U.S. But I had the story so ridiculously wrong, thinking that these guys were from New York. And the whole time, it's Nassau in the Bahamas, which I have to say, finding that out now, 52 years later, makes it all the more even impressive, right? That they were able to come out of the Bahamas. You can't see this one very good. This is Funky Nassau Parts 1 and 2 by The Beginning of the End. It just makes it even more amazing that they were able to come all the way from the Bahamas and bring that melting pot of music, as you will hear here in just a second, that is so obvious. So many different influences, cultural influences, stylistic influences. They're just got so much groove and so much soul and so much funk in this music. And man, that's a kind of a one-hit wonder story that you don't hear every day, coming from a place like that out of the Bahamas and having such a huge hit and such a cool song. And it so completely fooled me into thinking that they were some groovy group of musicians out of the New York area. Was I ever wrong? But I don't even care, because the song is an absolute jam. From the spring of 1971, am I the only one that remembers this one back in the day? Man, even being 12 and 13 in that summer of 71, this song was such a jam. Funky Nassau. Call it a hype record, call it a rave up. I don't care what you call it. This is a stone cold classic. Check this out. Nassau's gone funky, Nassau's gone soul. We've got a doggone beat now, we're gonna call our very own. Good God. Nassau rock and Nassau roll. Nassau's got a whole lot of soul. Feel right. Mini skirts, maxi skirts, and afro hairdo. People do their own thing and don't care about me or you. Nassau's gone funky. Nassau's got soul now. Oh yeah. And we got a doggone beat now. We're gonna take care of business too. Listen to the drummer playing his beat. Listen to the bass man go get the same groove as me. Listen to the guitar, give that soul some tune. Come on, girl, bring it on home to you. Ain't it funky now? Come on. Ah, yeah. Go ahead. Funky. Funky Nassau. Listen good. New York, you know.
London town is too doggone cold. Yeah, Nassau's got sunshine, and this you all know. Yeah, but we've gone funky, and we got some soul too. Alright, funky Nassau, funky Nassau. Funky Nassau, funky Nassau, funky Nassau, funky Nassau, funky Nassau. Listen, funky Nassau, funky Nassau, funky. Come on, Nassau.
Unbelievable. Well, first of all, you can hear all their cool influences right out there on their sleeves, right? These guys come out of Nassau in the Bahamas, not New York. They come out of the Bahamas and they've got that James Brown thing happening. They've got that Sly and the Family Stone thing happening. There's that cool Cuban element. The Miami vibe is in there in spades. It's soul, it's R&B, it's jazz, and it is just pure original magic. And like I said, I'm just even so much more impressed to find out that I was wrong. And it wasn't Nassau, New York, it was the Bahamas. And how cool is it that these guys come out and they've absorbed all those, really, the influence of global music. I mean, they're just absorbing music from everywhere. And they come out on their own with a record that's so groovy and so happening and so original, and yet that fits right in that pocket of, like I said, those rave up records, or what you call now hype records, I guess. And they just jumped right into the deep end of the pool and laid it down, man. And this is one of the all-timers. The Munnings brothers out of Nassau in the Bahamas, the capital of the Bahamas. And they come out in the early 70s and just throw down a jam. What a band. And then, poof, they are gone. But that song, man, that song is right in there. One of the classics in that genre, classics of that style, and certainly of the 70s. And it just always sounded so fresh. That's one that never got old. And that might be said as well of the one that we're going to be doing in the next video. We'll come a little bit closer to home, get out of the Bahamas, and come back to the good old US of A. But great job there, beginning of the end. Funky Nassau kicks some butt, doesn't it? We're going to come back to the US and come back to the Detroit scene in the early 70s and hear one of the iconic tunes that came out there. Man, I still think of this one here, and this one cranked on the car radio. You'll find out what that is in the next one. But how about Funky Nassau? Did any of you guys remember that? Nassau's got soul, right? And then they even name drop New York in the lyrics of the song. So if that doesn't make you think that they're singing about the Nassau community in New York, that would just fool you right there, because they start by mentioning New York and then London. So you think, okay, they're talking about their neighborhood and they're comparing it to London. Completely wrong. Bahamas. God, some smoking stuff. Well, I don't know what they were smoking, but that's a smoking track, that's for sure. Funky Nassau indeed. See you in the next one, folks. Beginning of the end, and then they vanished. One-hit wonders, poof, they're gone. Can you imagine you lay down something that epic and then out? We're out. Wow, unbelievable.